Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Sustainable Saturdays. Today we're going to be talking about cooking, everything about cooking, preserving, in case of emergency, the power grid's down, just if you don't have electricity and you need to cook. I do want to say this, Tommy will not be joining me in this video, and there's one reason. Tommy does not even know how to cook. He can boil water, and I guess he could cook an egg or two, but just the very, very basics. I usually do all the cooking. So I have threatened to do some videos and be teaching him how to cook. So if y'all think that's a good idea, let us know down in the comments below. But anyway, let's get started and see how I'm going to cook, or how I have cooked when times are bad. All right, I'm going to start out with what I use all the time. This is my gas stove, and it does have an electric start, but if the power is out, I can still use my stovetop. I have to light with matches though. No big deal. Life doesn't change that much. Now, the oven, on the other hand, I cannot use it if the power is out. So it's been a huge blessing. When we built this house, I wanted a gas stove because with Katrina, I was trying to cook outside on a little camp stove that was my dad's, that didn't have any sides to it or anything to keep the wind from putting the flame out. So this is one thing I really wanted. Now, I probably haven't said a whole lot about my stove. If you watched any of our videos, you've seen me cooking on our stove. But we have a propane tank, a big propane tank, and we don't have to fill that but about every 2 years. The stove is the only thing that is on propane in our house, so it takes a long time, and I try not to go that long with filling my bottle up. I usually try and wait till it's about half full, and then I have it refilled again. This last time I went a little longer. I went about 1.5 years, I believe. At least a year, but I think it was 1.5 years to 2 years, and it was down to 25%. So, worst case scenario, something happened, and I wasn't able to get my bottle filled like I normally do. I would start using some of the other cooking methods that we're fixing to talk about. I want to talk about another not so sustainable. Now, I know the stove's not sustainable. It's sustainable for a limited amount of time. And what I would do if something happened to where I wasn't going to be able to get the propane for the tank, what I would do is only use my stove for preserving my food. I do use the hot water bath. I do use a pressure canner. So I would reserve my stove just for those things. Now, I know that's not sustainable to last forever. I understand that. But it would last me for a little while. It would last me for quite a few years, in fact. Another thing we have is our little camp stove that we bought to go in the van. It takes these little bottles. This is not sustainable at all, but we do keep some of these bottles. This is something that I could use that could get me through. One thing that I thought about when I was pulling out this stove is I found a little coffee pot, because a lot of people, including us, we use a coffee maker that we have a 1 cup one that we just put the grounds in just for 1 cup. And so, and of course, coffee would run out eventually, but I usually have quite a bit of coffee. But anyway, this is an old-timey. My mama used to make coffee in a pot like this a long time ago. But anyway, the way it works, this is your reservoir where your coffee is going to be. This is your little filter for your coffee grounds. And you're going to put your coffee grounds in here. We found out the hard way when we were on vacation that like the McDonald's brand coffee is real powdery. Does not work in these. So that's when I switched back to community, because it's more granular. But anyway, you'd put your coffee in here, and you'd put this back on here, and you would boil enough water that's going to fill this up in another pot. Once that water comes to a boil or almost to a boil, you pour it in and it drips down. So this is a drip coffee pot. So, you know, you got to think about the different things that we use, like our toaster ovens and stuff like that. If we don't have electricity, we're not going to be able to cook like we normally cook. Okay, so this is number 2. Number 3 is my wood burning stove, and in my house. Now that is sustainable, right? Well, let's go over here and talk about it. Okay, here is my wood burning stove. We love our wood burning stove. It heats the house so very good. I keep water on it all the time. It's not real hot right now. It's not a real cold day today, but it is warm. But I keep this kettle of water on it all the time, and this is kind of warm. I have actually cooked directly on the stove. That's heavy. It's full of water. And I also use these little pot, I guess it's like a pot holder. On here I have a few other ones if it's really hot on the stove where I can raise my pots up or whatever. I have kind of made it look ugly on the top a little bit by putting pots directly on it. I've thought about using like a cookie sheet on top where my pots won't mess up the top of the stove. So this works very good. I have no control over the heat except to not have a real hot fire or to have a hotter fire. I've cooked a few things on it. I like it. It's very simple. I think I could do it. But you would think this is sustainable. It's not very sustainable for us because we're in Mississippi. And we only have about 3 pretty cold months a year. January, February, March. January, February, March. December is pretty cold, so maybe 4 cold months a year. So we could still cook on it, but it's going to get very hot in here. But let me show you my favorite feature of this stove. This stove has a little grill that goes in here. And the way it works is, like, to shut the stove down, you push this back, or you pull it forward. If you keep coming, you can actually add logs through the top, or you can put in a grill. And I think I'm going to grill chicken tonight for supper. You put your grill in, and then you can close it where smoke won't get in the house, or if it's a good hot fire, sometimes smoke doesn't get in the house. Let me show you the inside, how it looks. See, there we go. So you can cook right there on it. And then to take it off, you got to kind of use this at an angle. And it gets rather hot when it's good and hot and you're cooking. But this is my favorite feature of this stove. All right, number 4 on my list is our Magic Chef propane stove. And I know I'm not being very sustainable yet. I just want to show you all my different options. I do have a lot of different cooking options for short term. For long term, I know that these using propane is not sustainable. But it will help me out if something happens and I need short term, or if I need short term to start helping me to get prepared for the long term. So I love my Magic Chef camp. I guess it's like a camp stove, but it actually has legs and it's really good. A lot of people use it for canning, and I'm thinking that I'm going to probably try and do that this year. Instead of canning inside and heating up the house in the summertime, I'm going to try and can outside on my Magic Chef camp stove, because it's very sturdy, it's very strong, and I'm using it for like in my outdoor kitchen area too. So it's, you know, I'm sure the heating on it's a little bit different than my gas stove, but I'm used to cooking on a gas stove, so there's not really a huge learning curve with it. And like I said, I really, really like it. So that was number 4. Number 5 is something that is sustainable. I haven't used it a whole lot. I've just really used it one time. It's in here. It's a little rocket stove. And I got this to keep in the van. That's where I keep it in case of emergencies or just to cook. I think I heated up Tommy and I some chili and hot dogs and chili the last time we went to Virginia on our trip. So I'm going to have to get my little instructions out, but I mean, it all comes in this little, fits in this little bag right here, so it doesn't take up a lot of space. I'm not reading, I'm looking at the pictures. So It's going to sit here. This is going to sit, but it's going to stop right in there. The burning base in the middle. Yeah, this is going to go like this. Like that. And does this go on here? I don't know what this is for. I guess I need to do a little bit more work on this, don't I? This is if you're doing an alcohol something. Anyway, so here we go. There we are. Voila. My fire would be down in there. Okay, so that was number 4. No, it wasn't. That was number 5. Number 6. Number 6 is going to involve my spider. You see, it's just called a spider because I think it has legs on the bottom. And the idea is that you can have coals underneath and you put coals on top and it makes an oven. But I want to show you it. See how pretty? I've never used it before. My daughter Chelsea got this for me for my birthday a few years ago. And her husband was like, "Are you sure your mama would like that?" And she's like, "Trust me, she will love it." But I honestly have never used it before. I also picked up this little rack because you can set your lid on it like that. Because you can't turn your lid over and set it down to keep it clean. Because, number 1, you won't be able to touch the lid. Number 2, you'll lose all your coals off the top. I also have a thing to grab the lid like this. But I can't find it. It's somewhere in this house. But I just couldn't put my hands on it today. So anyway, and look, I have lots of books. Lots of books. Books, books, books. 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 And an unopened book. This is another thing I have to practice on. Got a nice fire pit outside that Tommy got me. It's a ring and everything, and it's something that I've got to practice because honestly, not done it before. Well, this is my fire pit, and I think it would work very well to have my pot sitting here and be able to put some coals up under it, put coals on top of it. But one thing I would like to get is they make an arm that would come up here and extend out over the fire pit, and you can swing your pot over the fire. You can actually lower it and raise it, and then you can swing it away from the fire to stir it and stuff like that. And I think to make cooking over an open fire a lot easier and more manageable, I think I would definitely need to invest in one of those arm things, whatever the name of that is. If you know the name of it, put it down below in the comments where I can search for it a little bit easier. Number 8 on my list, or is it number 7? I can't remember. 7 or 8 is my barbecue pit. Now, I have been cooking on my barbecue pit for years. You can tell that it's kind of old. I do have a thermometer on the top, and I do use the small chamber here where I will light a fire here, and then I will smoke meat and stuff here on this side. And it's kind of a mess because I obviously didn't clean it after I used it the last time. But I have been using, here's some burnt wood right here. I use wood on my barbecue pit, in my barbecue pit, when I am grilling, and it isn't easy. It doesn't do as well. It does do as well. It's not as easy to use as charcoal, but I have learned how to use wood on my barbecue pit, which that's good because there is a learning curve to doing that. So I do believe that this would be sustainable as long as you see that it doesn't rust out. One of my favorite things is not necessarily the heater sitting on top, but it's this old wood burning stove. I actually picked it up at an estate sale about 3 years ago, and obviously we don't use it because we have the heater from my mama's house. It's a gas heater sitting on top of it. But my goal one day is to clean it up. You see, it has these eye covers where you can actually cook on the top. We don't have a chimney on it, but it's outside. So I think this would be a very good sustainable way for me to cook. I'll show you the inside. It's got an oven, and I have bought things to clean and restore the stove. It does have cracks in the corners, and so I have bought a lot of different, I didn't buy this to clean the stove. I don't know why this is in here, but I actually have a lot of different tools and stuff in here to clean the stove. This is some stove polish paste. I don't even know if it's any good anymore, the stuff that I bought, some of it. This is a little thing that goes on a Dremel tool to really clean the stove up and restore it. I actually have some paste. Let's see what it says the name of this is. It says cement pour. But anyway, this is to fix the corners because some of the corners in the stove is burnt out. I've never cooked on a wood stove like this, so I know there is a pretty good size learning curve. But you see, it's got a nice little oven in it, and so I'm excited about restoring this. I think every year in the winter, when it's starting to get winter time, that things will slow down and I'll have time to do this, but I obviously haven't had time to do it. But I really think this is a good answer to my cooking needs, especially during the warmer months when I can't cook inside on the wood burning stove. There is another little problem with it too. These doors don't stay on like they're supposed to. This is where you would have put wood in, and let's see. Then there's an ash drawer here too, but the things that hold the wood up, they're on a little hinge, and you're supposed to be able to turn them and empty the wood and the ashes down into the drawer. They're broken. They don't stay up like they're supposed to. So I think I'm going to have some work done on it. I also have the piece of porcelain that goes here, and I can't remember what it says. It's a certain brand of stove, and I've looked it up on the internet, and I really haven't found any luck in figuring out what kind of stove or the value of it. I actually got it for $200 at an estate sale. I went the second day of the estate sale, and they had marked everything down half price, and so I got it for half price. So I think it was a great find, but I have a lot of work I need to do on it. Last, but certainly not least, is one of the items that I think is very sustainable, and that is my sun oven. I haven't done a ton of videos. Well, I've actually not put out any videos. I have made one video of me baking a chicken in my sun oven. I just love my sun oven. We got it year before last at Doug and Stacy's conference, and it really is amazing. When I was at the conference, I had done a talk on sourdough, and I made up some dough, and the man actually baked my bread in the sun oven. It did take a little bit longer, and it was funny because it produced a lot of sweat on the inside because bread is moist. And it was a very, very hot day too. It was in August. But I baked a chicken in it, and it turned out really good. I need to perfect the sun oven. The only thing that I found that it maybe takes a little bit longer, you have to keep adjusting it. You've got to be diligent in adjusting it, pointing to the sun to keep the temperature up. But y'all, it was so hard to remember with the sun oven that it's hot. You know, it is hot. It's an oven, and my tendency was to go out with my bare hands because it was just hard for me to wrap my mind around, this is hot, hot, hot. You know, this will burn me. Just like something coming out of this oven, the pot coming out of that oven was very hot. And so that was really hard for me to try and wrap my mind around that. but I really, really like my Sun oven. And it came with all kind of pots and pans to go in it that that fit right in there, because it's, of course, it's not huge, but it's not, you can get a pretty good sized pot in there, so you can bake in there, you can boil in there, you can actually sanitize water in there. So there's lots of things that you can do with the Sun oven that makes things easier. It's not like cooking over the wood fire. There would be a lot of cleanup because I had coals on the top of this pot and up under the bottom of this pot. With the Sun oven, of course you've got to clean the inside of your pot, but it's a much cleaner cooking. It won't be, everything won't taste smoky. So I think that is a very good option, and you can actually cook in it even when the sun is not out real bright. So I've got to do more cooking in that to perfect it, but I believe that is a very good option to have. In fact, we were talking about taking a trip last Thanksgiving camping, and my sister and I were talking about, because in our campers it's just a little bit, we have a camper too besides our van, but it's a very, very small oven. And I was going to bring, we ended up not getting to go, but our plan was to bring the Sun oven to be able to bake stuff in while we were gone, because our little ovens in the campers are so small. Plus, it comes with a pot that's actually a stackable pot that really, really makes things, where you can cook two things at the same time. The next thing to talk about with cooking, saying that you can master your different ways of cooking, or that I can master the different ways of cooking, is, how to preserve food. And of course, with us having a high tunnel, we would try and be producing food year round. But there's still going to be times that you're going to want to be able to preserve food. Now, I do can in a hot water bath and a pressure canner. I don't have a lot of experience canning meat. I feel like with me gonna have some propane, hopefully if something happened, I would have a full bottle of propane, or it's not a bottle, it's a tank, I guess is what you call it, and my other little bottles will be full of propane, so that'll help get me through. But I would have to learn how to preserve and can excuse me, on my wood burning stoves. There's a learning curve there as far as keeping it good and hot. So there's one area that I think we could be sustainable in, but I have a lot of work to do to learn how to be successful at it. So next is fermenting. I'm not proficient at it. You see, I have the kit. I actually got this at the Pratt's Hootenanny in Michigan, and haven't gotten proficient at it. That's one thing that I plan to do this year. I'd mentioned in a previous video that I'm not going to be doing the market this year, not near to the extent I did it in the last few years anyway. And so I'm hoping to have time when the harvest is coming in abundantly, that I will have time to do things like learn how to ferment, because fermented food is very good for you, and it's a way to preserve your food. So that's one thing that I want to learn. I always keep a lot of vinegar on hand, because I do preserve a lot of food in vinegar. I make pickles and stuff like that. I like pickled green beans and different things like that. Of course, that's not the answer to everything, but I do enjoy eating that kind of stuff, and it does help to preserve. Of course, thinking I'm going to preserve stuff with vinegar is not sustainable. I'll run out of vinegar. So, but that is something that I do as I do keep. I have probably 4 to 6 gallons of vinegar right now in my house, because I use it a lot, and I try and stay ahead and keep vinegar. But I think one of the best ways of preserving food, vegetables especially, will be dehydration. I do have a dehydrator. I have a, I can't call the name of it now, but I'll show you a picture of it. Anyway, I like my dehydrator, and there's certain things that I dehydrate. I don't dehydrate everything. Of course, it's electric. But that's one thing about the Sun Oven is that it has dehydrating racks that you can actually put in it, and you can use the sun to dehydrate your food in the Sun Oven. Now, that would be smaller amounts. It would be something that you would be doing every day, all day long, is keeping that going. But it's still, I don't know, like in a worst case scenario, I don't think that that would be the way you would need to dehydrate things, because you would be trying to deal with such volume. I have read and seen how people will put sheets out and lay their food on the sheets, and you even cover it with another sheet to keep the bugs and the birds and stuff like that away from it. And I've actually seen people put them up on the roof, and that's what my plan would be. On our porch outside, I would plan to dehydrate on the roof. Of course, that means I would have to bring it in every evening, and if it were to rain, and then I have to set it out, I have to lay it all out again. It would be very labor intensive, but I do think that I could do a lot of dehydrating outside. There's ways to dehydrate. You could your meat over fire and then with smoke, just over the open fire or right next to the open fire. I've seen that done. Also, having a smokehouse. That's one thing that we've wanted to do for a long time, is to build a smokehouse, because they used to preserve meat all the time doing that, and that would be with a cold smoke, not with a hot smoke. So my barbecue pit would not be the answer for that. I smoke stuff, but that's to be eaten or frozen. That wouldn't be something that would last. And honestly, this day and time, they advise not to preserve your meat like that. That if you do preserve your meat by smoking, that you should still freeze it. But of course, we would be wanting to look for something more sustainable than freezing. So I've got a lot of work to do in this area. I know that I do. I have a lot of work to do in this area. The different reading that I have done on people in the past, in the olden days, they didn't seem like they didn't have a lot of variety to eat in the wintertime, and probably because of preserving the food. Of course, you can put stuff into jams and jellies and stuff like that, and there is recipes where you can cook it down for a long time. Of course, then you have to have canning lids. So, when Tommy said that in one of the previous videos that it would be hard for anybody to be 100% sustainable, meaning not getting any outside input to your farm, to your household, I agree. It would be really, really hard, because just like if you were going to can something, if you're going to make jelly, you've got to have canning lids. Now, they do have the Tatter, I think it's pronounced Tatter, reusable canning lids, and that would be great. But eventually, those have to be replaced. They do not last forever. They last through a lot of uses, but they don't last forever. And so, we are so far removed this day and time from the way they used to do things and the way they used to preserve food. I know that there's a lot of people that are relearning those ways, and I think it's amazing. And I think with our convenience today of just being able to run to the store and get whatever we want, it doesn't matter if it's in season or out of season, we can go find that vegetable at the store. It's made us to where we haven't handed down these things from generation to generation, because our grandparents, your grandparents or great grandparents, my grandparents, I had an older mom, so I had an older grandfather. My actual grandfather used a lot of the old timey ways of preservation. My mama remembered a lot of the things, or some of the things that they used to do, and your grandparents did too. They obviously knew how to do it because we're here. They didn't die. So it's just a lost art, a lot of the food preservation, and even cooking without having electricity. It's just something that we take for granted, and I feel like it's something that we need to think about. I mentioned Katrina, the Hurricane Katrina earlier. You know, we kind of went back in time. I had a goat in milk. We had chickens. And we had freezers full of food. And I had canned stuff. So we didn't suffer. We might not have gotten to eat exactly what we wanted. We ate a lot of eggs. We drank a lot of milk because I didn't have a way to really preserve my milk. And to keep, we ended up getting some dry ice. And so I think I would put the milk in the ice chest with some dry ice sometimes. But, you know, worst case scenario, we're not going to have dry ice. So, you know, homesteaders worked really hard in the olden days. You know, they were constantly working to feed themselves and to preserve food for the winter. And that's just something that I'm just interested in learning, some of the old ways, and I need to learn. It would be good to know. And because the next generation is going to be even that much further far removed from that. So anyway, if Tommy were here, he would say, I'm going to throw you a curveball. What's coming up next week? And I would say sustainable wood, because we talked about my cooking on the wood stoves and everything, and I believe that's sustainable. I think that can be done, but it can't be done if we don't have firewood. So you know what? That's on Tommy. See you next week. Hope you have a great one. Also, if you haven't subscribed, would you please do that now and ring the bell where you'll be notified? And also, if you wouldn't mind, give us a thumbs up.